Hi guys, and welcome to another video in the Energy System Analysis Python course. My name is Anas Abuzayed, and in this video we will talk about the if conditions or the conditions generally, plus the for and while loops. So let's start with the very basic fundamentals of how conditions work. We talked previously how to say if we say 1 equals 2, so in Python it's equal, or 1 does not equal 2. That's a true. So we know how to do it. If we say 1 is bigger than 4, or 1 is smaller than 4, 1 is smaller or equal than 4, and 1 is greater or equal than 4. So these are the basic conditions that we use in Python. Another thing is the and or. So the two terms and or. You might know from basic logic design that true and true will give you a true, while true and false, or false and true, both will give you a false. In the same sense, false, of course, and false will give you false. So that's in case we deal with and. If we go to the or, so true or true, this will give us a true. True or false will give us a true. False or true will give us a true. And of course, false or false will give us false. So these are the basic fundamentals how conditions work. Let's say we define a list of carriers that are renewables, so on wind and off wind and solar, of course. And we define different power plants or carriers for different power plants. Let's say solar, P2 equals CCGT, P3 equals on wind, and P4 equals off wind. So I want to write a small program where I want to compare two power plants. If they have the same carrier, if their value is the same, then I want to print out they are the same carrier. So let's say that we use P1 and P2. So if P1 equals P2, then print they are the same carrier. So here, if we look at a very basic or simple if condition, so we start with the if condition, and then here we put the statement, let's say, or the condition that needs to be either true or false. If it was true, then it will go to the body of the statement, to basically to the action. So if P1 equals P2, then print they are the same carrier. So let's print it. It gave us nothing. On the same program that I wrote, I want to add, if they are not the same, but both of them are renewable carriers, then I want a statement to be printed to say they are not the same, but both are renewables. So basically we need elif. So else if this condition is not true, go to elif. So else if P1 does not equal P2 and P1 in A, which is our list, let's just define it as RES, just for context. So A is in RES and P1 is in RES and RES, then print they are not the same carrier, but both are renewables. So let's try it out. Then if P1 does not equal P2, that's true. P1 is in RES, that's true. And P2 is in RES. Is it true? That's false. So in this case, it was true and false. What's the answer for that? That's false. So this and this will be replaced by true and false. We know that's true. That's false, sorry. So I want to extend to my small program to say if they are not the same carrier, but one of them is in renewables, tell me that they are not the same carriers, but one of them is renewable. How to do this? So LF P1 does not equal to P2 and P1 in RES or P2 in RES. In this case, print they are not the same carrier, but one of them is renewable. Let's try it out. So now it what? They are not the same carrier, but one of them is renewable. As a final resort, if none of those conditions happen, so I want a condition to say they are not the same and they are not renewable. So in this case, it's basically let's say, exhausted all of the options, then we say else, print both, they are not the same carrier, both are none. So again, we get the third condition, which is if we go to this one, it's true and true or false. So if you go it like this, true and true, false. If you go it this way, this is true. Or if you go it this way, that's true or false. So either ways, it's either true and true or true and false. In both cases, the result is true. Let's try to play around with it. Let's say P1 equals, our list is solar, on wind, and off wind. So P1 equals coal. And let's try our small program. What would the output be? Is basically they are not the same carrier and both are not renewables. Why? Because P2 is CCGT, combined cycle gas turbine. P1 is coal. So this option is not true. This one will also be false. This one will be false, and it will go to the last one of them. So they are not the same carrier. Both are non-renewables. Say P1 is solar again. P2 is, let's change it to off wind. In this case, which one will work? It's basically the second one. So they are not the same carrier, but both are renewables. Let's say we put it as solar. So P1 is solar, P2 is solar. What might happen? Just pause it for a minute and think about it. So let's run it. They are not the same carrier, but one of them is renewable. Why is that? Even though both are solar, because it's case sensitive. So it needs to be small letter. Otherwise, it is not in the list. So solar with a capital S is not in this list. That's why it's not happening. So if we run it, that's why it said they are not the same carrier, but one of them is renewable, which is this one. So P1 does not equal to P2. Solar with a capital S does not equal solar with a small s. P1 in this case was solar, the small one is of course in RAS. P2, the one with the S capital, is not in RAS list. So this is the condition that happened. Now we correct it, so both are small letters, and we run our program, then it will give us they are the same carrier. So now let's talk about for loops. So what is the basic idea of any loop? Is that, let's say you have a list, for example, A is 1, 2, and 3, let's say, let's put different numbers, 45, 50, and 60. So it has a list of 3 numbers. And the idea of a for loop or any loop is that you iterate over this list. So you go first to the 45 and then to the 50 and to the 60, one by one. So how is it done? Is by saying for, here you define any variable. So let's say variable n, in our case A, our list, and then do something. So each time it will go inside A, it will begin with the first one, the second one, and the third one. Do I still have anything left in A? Not, then I will exit my for loop. So if I say for variable in A, print variable. Let's just make it X for ease. So for X in A, it will print the three values that you see in A. Let's say print X times 5. We do mathematical operation. So it will print X times 5. Another idea, how can you make a for loop? Let's say we want to always print the index of it. So we know that A of 0 is 45, A of 2 is 60. How can I do that? Is by iterating over a range of length A. So we did previously the range and length. So now we use it in a for loop. So for X in range len of A, what is the range len of A? It's a range from 0 to 3. So if you remember, we make it as a list. It's basically 0, 1, and 2. So if you print it, print X, again, X here, every time the value of X will change. The value of whatever you put here as within this loop will change. So here you see it, for example, X is now 60 because that's what we did in the previous one. Here, X will be 2, the last value. But X value will be changing. So it will be 0, 1, and 2. So let's try it now. So that's 0, 1, and 2. So that's how we make a for loop. Every time you want to iterate over any type or any set of data, either it's a list, a dictionary, a data frame later on in pandas, or even a NumPy array, anything you want to iterate over, you need a loop. So it's either a for loop or a while loop. Here we start with the for loop. So what exactly it is, whatever you put here, X value will iterate over it. So it will start from the first element to the last element, and the value of our variable, let's say in this case X, will change based on what you put in there. So say we have that different lists. So I pre-prepared those, say different technologies, different nominal power, different commissioning year, and different coordinates. We just remove those and rerun this again. So we have text, which is a list of 6 carriers, solar, on-wind, or 6, not carriers, 6 power plants, of wind, CCGT, and solar. We have their nominal power, so P nom. So solar has a nominal power of 200, on-wind of 1200, CCGT of 3000, and so on. Let's go back. Solar, 220 megawatts, and it was commissioned in 2010. And coordinates is a list of lists. So we said previously, a list can be a list of anything. So it can be a list of different lists. So here, its coordinates, X and Y, longitude and latitude, are 50.19 and 9.33. So I want to have a for loop where each time I access those lists and print out a command to say power plant number X or number 1 is solar. It has a nominal power of 220. It was commissioned in 2010 and its coordinates are this and that. So let's try to access them first before we use any loop. So if we want to access power plant 1, that's X of 0. And if you want its nominal power, that's P nom of 0. Its commissioning, or it's the year that it was commissioned, is year commissioned of 0. And its coordinates are 50.19 and 9.33. If I want them, let's say split it, the longitude and the latitude alone. Again, this is another list. How can I access this list? By adding another one. So this is 0 of 0 and this is 0, 1. This will give you both coordinates. So if you want to print it, let's just say that we do it without any for loop. How can we do it? By saying print, and then we open up something, power plant, let's say PP1 is, so we want to use format as X megawatt commissioned in this year, its coordinates are. So now you add dot format, and then you need to add each one of those. So this one, then this one, this one, this one, and this one. We add curly brackets for each one. So PP1 is text 0, solar. Its nominal power is this much. It was commissioned in this year, and the coordinates are X and Y. So we print it now. Let's do it for PP2. So I think also here, we need another one, and then we say the number one. Let's do it for number 2. So the same thing here, X2, then you need 1, 1, and so on. So 1, let me just do it. So we have 6 power plants. If we want to do it each time like this, it will take us forever. Let's say you have 100 power plants or 1,000 power plants. It will take you forever to write each time and change the number each time. If you see here, what is changing is the number of the index. So 0, 1, or 1, 2, and so on. So it is much easier to do it with a for loop. So if we want to do it, let's say, okay, for X and if you say for X and text, for example, the list text, and then you print X, it will only print the carriers. But you want it as an index so that each time you say, okay, print text of this index. How we did it, as we did before, range of lim of text. Now you have the index. So you can say text of 0, then you have X, then you have the different carrier. Now let's go back to this one. So we push tab just to put it inside the for loop, and then we start with it. So we said, now we have X that is changing. So instead of text of 0, we said X, 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 and X anyways. So this one here, again, we put X. Now let's start doing it. And just put it a bit. So now it accessed each time. And then it said, okay, it was solar, it has this much megawatts. It was commissioned in 2010, and the coordinates are so on. So here we have PP0 till PP5, but we want it to start from 1 to 6, not from 0 to 5. How can we do it? Just by saying X plus 1. And then if you run it again, go back, then voila, it's basically the same. So now we have PP1 to PP6. So iterating over a list of items or with the index or with the item itself is very useful, especially if you have bigger data frames or bigger data sets. So before we continue, you might have seen here that it is a very long line. Normally there is many guidelines on how many characters are not really allowed, but What I mean is that this line is really long here, and we need to move back and forth just to see it. So in order to split this line here, you can use this character here, if you can see it. So we close this one and then open new line. So this one here is now split on two lines. Same thing would go here. So something like this, it looks much easier to read or to maybe even run without going back and forth. You can do it as you like, but it's just a way of showing nicer data. Now let's continue with the loops. Let's say we only want, so we have 3 solar power plants, and we only want to show it or to print the power plant only if there is a solar power plant. So how can we do it? By adding an if condition here, by saying, okay, if x of x equals solar, then print it. Now, if I, so like this, if we run this one here, it will give us an error. What's the reason for that? Because if you want this if to belong to the for loop, you need to have a space of 1 tap, so on the keyboard. Now, this one here belongs to the if after the if for loop. So we need to shift it again in order for it to be running. That's why now if we run it, you will only see that the solar power plants are printed. Let's say, did we remove yeah, we removed it. So let's say we go back to renewables, we copy it back here and run it to be, let's say again, we want to run it not only if it's solar, but only if it's in renewable. So if text of x, which is the carrier each time that it's changing, n RES, so in the list of renewables, then also print it. So now we have solar, on wind, solar, off wind, and solar. Now let's say we want only if it was renewable to be printed, and in case it was not renewable, we wanted to skip it. So how is that done in the for loops? By using something called either continue or break, one of those. So what's the difference between continue and break? Let's try it out. So let's say we have if texts are in renewables, printed, we want to do nothing, and else, so if this condition was not true, then break. What would happen? Let's try it out. Now it only prints, so if you compare it to the old one, where we had solar on wind, solar off wind, and then solar. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. Where in this one, it printed the first 4, then it reached PP5, which is the gas, and then broke. So basically break here means exit the whole for loop, do not continue. That's why you don't see the 6th power plant, which is the solar. Now, if we change this one into continue, what would happen? Moving back and forth. So it came to PP5. It saw that it is not in the list. So this condition here is not, let's say, is not true. So it went to the else. Now in else, it saw continue. Continue means skip to the next one. So for example, let's say you want each renewable power plant to multiply its nominal power. Let's do it. So let's say only in case it was renewable, I want to multiply its nominal power times 2. Now we go back to the old one. So it's 220, 1200, 450, 2600, and 500. This 3000 is for the CCGT, the gas. So only if it was renewable, I want to multiply it by 2. Now let's run our new code. Check. Basically, it's multiplied by 2. Now, if we use it within the break, whenever whenever this condition was else, and then it came to the break, it exits the full for loop and does not continue from there on. So that's it for the for loop. We will use definitely much more, let's say, complicated for loops. We will construct them together later on in the course. So hopefully by the end of this course, you will be mastering those for loops. Let's go for the while loop. So it's the same principle. As long as we said for the for loop, as long as x is in this range, so it starts from 0 to that or so on, it will continue iterating over the list. The only difference in while loop, so here, for example, you saw that if you just make it a very simple one and only print x. So you will see that it's moving from 0 to 5. So it starts from 0, then adds on 1, adds on 2, adds on 3, and so on. In while loops, this +1 is not built in while loop. So that's the only difference there. And in while loop, as long as whatever in while loop is true, it will continue iterating. So let's do it like this. Let's try the same. Let's say y in range of len of text, just print y. Let's keep it as simple as possible. The first thing that you will notice that there is an error. What's this error? Y is not defined. So let's say y equals to 0. And then print it. What you will see here is that it's an infinite loop. So you need to break it either by pressing over this button here or Control C. So you need to interrupt it. Why? Because we did not put anything to change this y. So y is 0. This while loop here did not change anything in y, and then we just say print y. So if we say y equals y plus 1, or as we learned previously, y plus equal 1, and then print it, you will have the same thing. So if you copy the same one here, and then just do it, of course, here you need to say y, and y here, also here. So here, next to the continue, we need to say y plus equal 1, so that the value of y changes. Now, if we try it, it's working the same as the for loop. So either use while loop or for loop, it really does not make a big of a difference. The only thing that I don't like in while loops is that you need to define something before. Where in the for loop, even if you don't define, let's say ZZ and ZZ. So there is no variable called ZZ, it's not defined. And if you run it without any error. While if you do the same, let's say with a while loop, so let's say while XX and then print XX, it will give you an error that it's not defined. So you need to define it before. So it equals 0. That's the only difference, let's say. Now, one last thing on the for loops. Let's say we want to iterate, so we want the values of it. So int x and print x. So here you will see that it will give you the values, the actual values, not the indexes. If you want the indexes, we said range, len, and then text, and then you get it. What if I want both? So I want the index of the value and the value itself. So there is another function called enumerate. So, and then I say text. What really happens is that this enumerate returns back the index and the value. So let's say idx and val goes with the dots. So it gives you each time what's the index of it and what's the value of that. So if you say idx, now it's 5, and the value of it is solar. So using enumerate might be very helpful also when you go through big data frames where you need the value, maybe for a condition, and in the same sense, you also need the index. So it might be a very efficient way of using it. You use list of enumerate of text. It will give you the exact same answer. So basically, 0 with solar, 1 and wind. So basically, you are iterating over them. Another also tip for using for loops is, let's say we had it previously here. One moment. Let's go to the first one, where we needed to each time say, okay, what's this and what's that? Let's say we only use without the coordinates, so we only take the technology, sorry, the nominal power and the commissioned years. So instead of each time using X with the list name and so on, you can define different variables over different lists. How is it that done? Let's say for X, let's just keep it X for the beginning, or let's say anything here, just in case. N, and then we say text, sorry, P nom and year commissioned. And then let's just say, let's just keep it print anything. So what it basically makes is that it makes some kind of merging of the three lists. And then here you can define three variables. So let's say carrier, megawatt, and then year. And then let's say carrier, megawatt, and year. So it goes through the same lists instead of what we did before in range and len. It goes, let's say, the first variable that you define here goes through the text, the first list that you put in the zip. The second one goes in the second one, and the third one goes in the third one. So, for example, year here, it was 2010, 2008, 2015, 2017, 2005, and 2019, and so on. So you can define it in this way. Let's say we also want the index with it. So not only the values, but also the index. So we make a combination of enumerate and zip. By using enumerate, we get the values and the index. And by using zip, we can have different lists combined in one for loop without let's say, the need of using each time with this index and so on. So how we do it, So how we do it is like this. So here we say enumerate, and then we add it next to it. If you just say list of this one, it will give you the first element, which is the count, the second element, which is the combination of the three lists, the first index of them, or the zeroth index of them, the first and second, and so on. So here we put them, say count, and then this one. So if you remember in enumerate, the first one was the index. I just say count here, maybe index, I don't care. And the second one is the value. Here we have three values, not one value. So if we add it now, and then we print it, now we have the index and each one of them. So if I want to do the same here to print it, instead of x plus 1, then I say idx plus 1, and then I say carrier, megawatt, and then here. Let's just remove the coordinates to make it a bit easier, and then, yeah, let's just remove all of those. So now we have different variables that we define here, and the code looks much cleaner, and for future users, you can debug it in a much more easier way than we do this way. So that's how we use for loops and so on. We will use lots of for loops in this course. So you will definitely get better with it. Now, if you want to do it on a dictionary, it's again the same. So let's say we have a dictionary of the power plants that we used in previous video. We have those power plants. Let's say the same thing, but now as a dictionary. So if we run them all, then we have plant one, which is one power plant, one solar power plant, 220, commissioned in 2010 and the same coordinates and so on. And then we have a dictionary for those power plants. So now we combine them all. Let's say we add a new power plant to it. Now let's iterate over it. So we want to iterate over this dictionary. So first to know its keys. So we want to go inside each of one using those keys because that's how we access it. So if you want to access the gas power plant, how will you do it is by saying plant 5. Then that's now you are in the gas power plant and then you can print it out. So how will we do it is by using a for loop. So for, let's say, key in this one here, and then print key. So now you are iterating over the keys where the key value is changing every time. If you want to use it with enumerate, and then say I and key. So now you have the numbers. Let's just copy this one. But let's just do it. Okay, then we say print power plant with the number. So the bracket is so the carrier with X megawatts and in a year. I don't want the coordinate just to make it a bit easier. So then dot format. Now, the first one is the number, so I plus 1. Because we start from 0, we wanted power plant 1. And then, now this is the carrier. So we said in order to access it, let's say any power plant. And then we say, what's the key here? It's tech. So now we have this one, CCGT. So this one will go here. Let's just split it just to make it easier. So dot format, this one, instead of plant 5, we iterate over the key, and then will be the same. So the first one is the technology, the second one is Pinot, and then the third one or the last one is here commissioned. So just copy. So here, although it's a dictionary, so that's how we access it. So let's say just before we execute the for loop. So the plant dictionary is a dictionary of itself. In order to use it, you need to know the keys, but each one of them, each of those keys, each of those elements are also a dictionary. So in order to access them, you need to know their keys. So now we have them. Each time you want to access it, you need to have the first key, and then let's do it like this, and then the second key. So the second key, for example, let's say Pinot. So this is the key for this dictionary, and this is the key for this dictionary, for the whole of it. So now if we run this one, it is the same one that we did before. The first one was iterating over a list. The second one was iterating over a dictionary. So it's very important to know how to iterate over these items because it's an essential tool in order to manipulate the data or in order to do your mathematical operations on them. Thank you for watching the video, and we see you in the next one.